The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air, a constant reminder of the hospital room. Each breath I took was filtered through that clinical smell, a stark contrast to the familiar scent of Dad's workshop, sawdust, oil, and the faint, comforting aroma of pipe tobacco. That workshop, a haven of creation and shared moments, now felt like a distant, almost mythical place. Like a dream I was desperately trying to cling to as I woke. He lay in the bed, pale and still, a landscape of tubes and wires obscuring the man I knew. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was a constant, maddening pulse, a distorted heartbeat that echoed the turmoil in my own chest. It had been 3 weeks since the accident, 3 weeks since the world tilted on its axis and threw my life into a chaotic spin. The car had been a mangled mess of metal and glass. They said he was lucky to be alive. Lucky. The word felt like a cruel joke. He was alive, yes, but the man who emerged from the wreckage was a stranger. A stranger with my father's face. The doctor's words still echoed in my ears, cold and clinical. Traumatic brain injury, retrograde amnesia, significant memory loss, personality changes. A litany of devastating phrases that stripped away the future I had always taken for granted. I pulled up a chair beside his bed, the plastic cold against my skin. I'd spent countless hours here, willing him to wake up, willing him to remember. I smoothed a stray strand of silver hair from his forehead, a familiar gesture that now felt alien. His eyes fluttered open, and for a fleeting moment, hope surged through me. But the eyes that met mine were vacant, devoid of recognition. They were the eyes of a stranger lost in an unfamiliar landscape. "Hello, Dad," I said softly, my voice trembling. He frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Who are you?" The words were a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. I had prepared myself for this, rehearsed the conversation in my head 1,000 times. But nothing could have prepared me for the sheer, raw pain of being a stranger to my own father. "It's me, Dad, it's Sarah, your daughter." He stared at me blankly. "Sarah? I don't have a daughter named Sarah." He paused, his eyes searching my face. I don't remember you." The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, hot and silent, tracing a path down my cheeks. I reached for his hand, but he flinched away, his eyes filled with a flicker of fear. "Don't touch me," he said, his voice raspy. "I don't know you, and I don't like you being here." That was the beginning of it. The beginning of my life as a ghost in my own father's life. The initial shock gave way to a desperate, frantic attempt to jog his memory. I brought photo albums filled with snapshots of our life together, birthdays, holidays, family vacations. I described our shared experiences, recounted funny stories, and reminded him of the little things that made our relationship unique. I showed him pictures of me as a child, a gap-toothed grin plastered across my face as I sat on his lap, clutching a stuffed bear. I told him about the time he taught me to ride my bike, his hands steadying me as I wobbled down the street. I reminded him of the camping trips we took, the stars we identified, the stories he told around the campfire. But nothing. His eyes remained blank, his expression unchanging. It was like showing photographs to a blind man, describing colors to someone who had never seen the light. The doctors explained that his long-term memory was severely impaired. He remembered his childhood, his career as an architect, his life before I was born. But the last 30 years, the years that defined our relationship, were a void, a blank canvas. He remembered my mother, who had passed away 10 years ago. He spoke of her with love and tenderness, his eyes softening with a hint of sadness. But when I mentioned her, when I told him how much she loved him, he looked at me with suspicion. "You're making things up," he said accusingly. "You're trying to trick me." His distrust was like a knife twisting in my heart. This wasn't just amnesia. It was something more. It was a rejection, a complete and utter erasure of my existence. The hospital staff tried to reassure me, telling me that these personality changes were common after a traumatic brain injury. They urged me to be patient, to understand that he wasn't himself. But patience was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every day that passed felt like another nail in the coffin of our relationship. I started bringing familiar objects from his house, hoping to trigger some dormant memory. His favorite pipe, his worn leather armchair, the model sailboat he had built as a child. He looked at them with detached curiosity, as if they belonged to someone else. One day I brought his toolbox, the one he had used for countless projects around the house. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the familiar contours of the wood. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He opened the toolbox, rummaged through the contents, and pulled out a hammer. He stared at it intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. I used to build things," he said slowly, his voice hesitant. "I don't remember what, but I remember the feeling of building." It was a breakthrough, a tiny crack in the wall of amnesia. Hope surged through me again, stronger this time. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to reach him. After a month in the hospital, he was discharged to a rehabilitation center. The center specialized in treating patients with brain injuries, offering physical therapy, occupational therapy, and cognitive rehabilitation. I visited him every day, attending his therapy sessions, participating in his exercises, and trying to reestablish a connection. The physical therapy was grueling. He struggled to walk, his movements stiff and uncoordinated. His speech was slurred, his sentences fragmented, but he persevered, driven by a stubborn determination to regain his independence. The occupational therapy focused on helping him relearn everyday tasks, dressing himself, preparing meals, writing. He approached these tasks with the same meticulous attention to detail that he had always applied to his work as an architect. He had been a renowned architect, designing buildings that were both functional and beautiful. His work was characterized by clean lines, innovative use of space, and a deep respect for the environment. He had won numerous awards, and his buildings were admired around the world. Now he struggled to draw a straight line. He couldn't remember the names of basic tools. He couldn't even remember how to make a cup of coffee. The cognitive rehabilitation was the most challenging. It involved exercises designed to improve his memory, attention span, and problem-solving skills. He was asked to solve puzzles, remember lists of words, and recall recent events. He failed miserably at most of these tasks, his frustration growing with each failed attempt. "This is pointless," he said angrily one day, throwing a puzzle across the room. "I'm never going to get better. Just leave me alone." His anger was directed at me, a constant barrage of resentment and hostility. He accused me of being intrusive, of being a liar, of trying to take advantage of him. He said he didn't want me in his life, that he would be better off without me. "You're not my daughter," he said coldly. "I don't know who you are, but you're not my daughter. My daughter would never treat me like this." His words were like shards of glass, cutting me to the core. I tried to remain calm, to reason with him, to explain that I was only trying to help. But he wouldn't listen. He had built a wall around himself, a fortress of amnesia and resentment, and I was on the outside, desperately trying to break through. The doctor suggested family therapy, hoping to improve communication and resolve some of the underlying issues. But he refused to participate. He said he didn't need therapy, that there was nothing to talk about. "I just want her out of my life," he told the doctors. "I want her to leave me alone." After 3 months in the rehabilitation center, he was deemed well enough to return home. I had spent weeks preparing his house, making it safe and accessible for him. I installed grab bars in the bathroom, lowered the kitchen counters, and removed any potential hazards. I thought that being back in his own environment might trigger some memories, might make him feel more comfortable. But it had the opposite effect. He seemed even more agitated and disoriented. He wandered through the house like a stranger, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings with suspicion. He touched the furniture, examined the artwork, and rummaged through the drawers, as if searching for something he couldn't find. "This isn't my house," he said one day, his voice trembling. "This is someone else's house. You've brought me to the wrong place." I tried to reassure him, to remind him of the memories we had shared in this house. But he wouldn't listen. He insisted that he had never seen the house before, that it was all a fabrication. He became increasingly paranoid, accusing me of stealing his possessions, of plotting against him, of trying to control his life. He started locking his bedroom door at night, refusing to let me in. One morning, I found a note taped to my bedroom door. It was written in his shaky handwriting. "Get out," it said. "I want you out of my house. I never want to see you again." The note was like a final, devastating blow. I had tried everything I could to reach him, to reconnect with him, to rebuild our relationship, but it was all for nothing. He didn't want me in his life. He wanted me gone. I sat on my bed, the note clutched in my hand, and wept. I wept for my father, for the man he used to be, for the memories we had lost. I wept for myself, for the daughter who had been erased from her father's life. I knew I had to respect his wishes. I couldn't force him to love me, to remember me, to accept me. I had to let him go, even if it meant losing him forever. Leaving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Packing my belongings, boxing up my memories, and walking out the door felt like tearing a piece of myself away. I left the house as I found it, neat and tidy, a blank canvas for him to repaint with his own memories, or lack thereof. I found a small apartment in a nearby town, a place that felt both temporary and strangely liberating. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild my life without the constant reminder of what I had lost. The first few weeks were the hardest. The silence in my apartment was deafening, broken only by the occasional ring of the telephone. I missed the familiar sounds of my father's house, the ticking of the grandfather clock, the creaking of the floorboards, the murmur of the television. I tried to stay busy, throwing myself into my work as a freelance writer. I wrote articles about travel, food, and culture, anything to distract myself from the pain. But even in my writing, I couldn't escape the shadow of my father's absence. Every article I wrote about family, about connection, about memory felt like a betrayal. How could I write about these things when my own family had been shattered, when my connection to my father had been severed, when my memories were all that I had left? I avoided contact with my friends and family, afraid of their questions, their sympathy, their well-meaning but ultimately useless advice. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to explain. I just wanted to be left alone to grieve. One day, my Aunt Carol called. She was my mother's sister, and she had always been a close confidant. I had been avoiding her calls, but this time I couldn't ignore her. "Sarah, honey, I'm worried about you," she said, her voice filled with concern. "I haven't heard from you in weeks. Are you okay?" I hesitated, unsure of what to say. "I'm fine, Aunt Carol," I said finally. "Just busy." "Don't lie to me, Sarah," she said gently. "I know what's going on with your father. Your cousin told me." I sighed. "There's nothing to tell," I said. "He doesn't remember me. He doesn't want me in his life. That's it." "Oh, honey," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I said. It's just the way it is." "Have you thought about getting some help?" she asked. "Talking to a therapist, maybe?" I had considered it, but I had always dismissed the idea. What could a therapist do? They couldn't bring my father back. They couldn't restore his memory. They couldn't fix what was broken. "I don't know, Aunt Carol," I said. "I don't think it would help." "It might," she said. "It's worth a try, isn't it?" I thought about it for a moment. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did need help. Maybe I couldn't do this alone. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll think about it." Finding a therapist was daunting. There were so many to choose from, each with their own specialties and approaches. I spent hours researching different therapists online, reading reviews, and trying to find someone who seemed like a good fit. I finally settled on a woman named Dr. Emily Carter. She specialized in trauma and grief, and she had a warm, compassionate demeanor that put me at ease. My first session was awkward and uncomfortable. I sat on the therapist's couch, fidgeting with my hands, and struggled to articulate my feelings. I felt like I was unloading a lifetime of pain and sorrow onto a complete stranger. Dr. Carter listened patiently, nodding occasionally, offering words of encouragement. She didn't interrupt, she didn't judge, she simply allowed me to talk. I told her about the accident, about my father's amnesia, about his rejection. I told her about the memories we had shared, about the dreams we had lost. I told her about the guilt, the anger, the sadness, the loneliness. "It sounds like you're going through a lot," she said gently when I had finished. "It's understandable that you're feeling overwhelmed." "I don't know what to do," I said, my voice trembling. "I feel like I've lost everything." "You haven't lost everything," she said. "You've lost your father, yes. But you haven't lost yourself. You still have your own life, your own dreams, your own potential." "But what's the point?" I asked. "What's the point of having a life if I can't share it with the people I love?" "The point is to live it for yourself," she said. "To find joy, to find meaning, to find purpose. Your father's amnesia doesn't have to define your life. You can choose to move forward, to create a new life, a new future." Her words resonated with me. She was right. I couldn't let my father's amnesia control my life. I had to take charge, to find my own path, to create my own happiness. "How do I do that?" I asked. "That's what we're going to explore together," she said. "We're going to work on processing your grief, managing your emotions, and developing coping mechanisms. We're going to help you find your strength, your resilience, and your hope." The therapy sessions were difficult, often emotionally draining, but they were also incredibly helpful. Dr. Carter helped me to understand my feelings, to challenge my negative thoughts, and to develop healthier coping strategies. She encouraged me to practice self-care, to take time for myself, to do things that I enjoyed. She reminded me that it was okay to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel lost. She taught me how to be kind to myself, how to forgive myself, how to accept myself. Slowly, gradually, I began to heal. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became more manageable. The sadness didn't vanish, but it became less overwhelming. The loneliness didn't fade away, but it became less isolating. I started to reconnect with my friends and family, to rebuild the relationships I had neglected. I joined a writing group, where I met other writers who understood my passion and my struggles. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter, where I found joy in helping animals in need. I began to realize that my life wasn't over. It was just different. And maybe, just maybe different could be good. Months passed. I settled into a routine, a comfortable rhythm of work, therapy, and volunteering. I still thought about my father every day, but the pain was no longer as acute. I had learned to live with the absence, to accept the reality of our situation. One afternoon, as I was working on an article, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find a familiar face standing on my doorstep. It was my father. He looked different. He was thinner, his hair was grayer, and his eyes were filled with a sadness I had never seen before. But it was him. There was no mistaking it. I stared at him in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. "Dad?" I whispered. He nodded slowly. "Sarah," he said, his voice hesitant. Can I come in?" I stepped aside and he entered my apartment. He looked around the small space, his eyes taking in the simple furnishings, the cluttered desk, the overflowing bookshelves. This is nice," he said awkwardly. "Thank you," I said. "What are you doing here, Dad?" He hesitated again, his eyes shifting nervously. I wanted to see you, he said. I wanted to talk to you. I led him to the couch and we sat down facing each other. The silence hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken words. I've been thinking a lot about you, he said finally. About what happened. About everything. I know, I said softly. I don't remember everything, he said. I still have gaps in my memory, but I remember you. I remember you being my daughter. Tears welled up in my eyes. You do? I whispered. He nodded. I remember your smile, he said. I remember your laugh. I remember the way you used to hug me. He reached out and took my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. I'm so sorry, Sarah, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. I was wrong. I was so wrong. It's okay, Dad, I said, squeezing his hand. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was, he said. I let the amnesia control me. I let it turn me into someone I'm not. I pushed you away when I should have held you close. I understand, I said. Do you forgive me? He asked, his eyes pleading. Of course I forgive you, Dad, I said. I never stopped loving you. He pulled me into a hug and I buried my face in his shoulder, sobbing. It was the hug I had been longing for, the hug I had thought I would never get again. I love you too, Sarah, he said, his voice muffled. I love you so much. The reunion was just the beginning. Rebuilding our relationship would take time, patience, and a lot of hard work, but we were both willing to put in the effort. He started visiting me regularly at my apartment. We talked for hours, sharing memories, catching up on each other's lives. He told me about his struggles with amnesia, about the confusion and frustration he had felt. I told him about my therapy sessions, about the progress I had made, about the new life I had created. He started participating in my life again. He came to my writing group meetings, offering insightful critiques and encouraging words. He volunteered with me at the animal shelter, helping to care for the abandoned and neglected animals. He even started working on small projects around my apartment, fixing leaky faucets, hanging pictures, and building shelves. It was like he was rediscovering his passion for architecture, his love of creating things with his hands. One day, he brought his toolbox over to my apartment. It was the same toolbox that I had brought to the rehabilitation center, the one that had triggered that flicker of recognition in his eyes. He opened the toolbox and pulled out a hammer. He stared at it intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. I remember this, he said slowly. I remember building things with this hammer. I remember building things with you. He looked at me, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. We used to build birdhouses together, he said. Do you remember? I smiled. Of course I remember, Dad, I said. We built dozens of them. We hung them all over the yard. We should build another one, he said. We should build one for your apartment. I'd like that, I said. We spent the rest of the afternoon building a birdhouse. It wasn't perfect, but it was made with love. We hung it outside my window, and soon birds started to nest in it. The birdhouse became a symbol of our renewed relationship, a reminder of the memories we had shared, and a promise of the memories we would create. He eventually moved back into his house, but he kept in close contact. We spoke on the phone every day, and we saw each other at least once a week. He started attending family gatherings again, reconnecting with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. He even started dating again. He met a woman at a senior center, a kind and compassionate woman who understood his struggles with amnesia. They hit it off immediately, and soon they were inseparable. I was happy for him. He deserved to be happy. He had been through so much, and he had finally found peace and contentment. Years passed. My father's memory never fully returned, but he learned to live with it. He focused on the present, on the people he loved, on the things that brought him joy. He continued to inspire me with his resilience, his strength, and his unwavering spirit. He taught me the importance of forgiveness, the power of hope, and the enduring nature of love. He never fully regained his former career as an architect, but he found new ways to express his creativity. He started painting, creating vibrant and colorful canvases that reflected his inner world. He started writing poetry, expressing his thoughts and feelings in lyrical verses. He became a mentor to young aspiring artists, sharing his knowledge and his experience with them. He encouraged them to pursue their dreams, to never give up on their passions, to always believe in themselves. He lived a long and fulfilling life, surrounded by love and laughter. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, at the age of 92. His funeral was a celebration of his life, a testament to his impact on the world. Friends, family, colleagues, and students came from all over the world to pay their respects. I delivered the eulogy, speaking from the heart, sharing my memories of my father, both the good and the bad. I talked about his talent, his kindness, his resilience, and his love. My father may have lost his memory, I said, but he never lost his heart. He taught me the true meaning of love, the true meaning of family, the true meaning of life. After the funeral, I returned to my apartment, feeling a deep sense of loss. But I also felt a sense of peace. I knew that my father's legacy would live on, not just in my memory, but in the memories of everyone who had known him. I looked out the window at the birdhouse, the one that we had built together. The birds were still nesting in it, chirping their cheerful songs. I smiled. My father was gone, but his spirit lived on. He was still with me, in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. And I knew that one day we would be together again, in a place where memories never fade and love never ends. Life moved on. The sharp edges of grief softened, replaced by a gentle ache of remembrance. I continued my writing, my therapy, and my volunteering, each activity a thread woven into the tapestry of my life. The birdhouse outside my window remained, a silent sentinel, a constant reminder of the man who had been lost and found, the father who had forgotten and remembered. One day, while sorting through my father's belongings, I stumbled upon a box labeled Sarah's Things. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, and a wave of nostalgia washed over me. Inside, nestled among old photographs and childhood drawings, was a small, worn notebook. Its cover was faded, its pages yellowed with age. I opened the notebook and began to read. It was my father's journal, a collection of his thoughts, feelings, and reflections on life. The entries spanned decades, from his early days as an aspiring architect to his later years as a mentor and artist. As I read, I discovered a side of my father I had never known. I learned about his struggles, his doubts, his fears, and his triumphs. I learned about his deep love for my mother, his unwavering pride in my accomplishments, and his constant worry for my well-being. And then I came across an entry that stopped me cold. It was written just weeks before the accident. "Sarah is the best thing that ever happened to me," it read. "I don't always tell her how much I love her, but I hope she knows. She's my rock, my confidant, my inspiration. I can't imagine my life without her." Tears streamed down my face as I read those words. They were the words I had longed to hear, the words I had doubted he felt. They were proof that even in the darkest moments of his amnesia, a part of him, a deep and abiding love, had remained. I closed the journal and clutched it to my chest. In that moment, I realized that my father's amnesia had not erased our relationship. It had merely obscured it, hidden it beneath a layer of confusion and pain. But the love had always been there, waiting to be rediscovered. I spent the next few years writing a book about my father, about his life, his struggles, his triumphs, and his legacy. It was a labor of love, a way to honor his memory and to share his story with the world. The book was a success. It was praised by critics, embraced by readers, and even adapted into a film. It touched the hearts of people from all walks of life, reminding them of the importance of family, the power of forgiveness, and the enduring nature of love. And so, my father's story lived on, not just in my memory, but in the hearts and minds of countless others. He had been an architect of buildings, but he had also been an architect of lives, shaping the world with his kindness, his compassion, and his love. And I, his daughter, was proud to carry on his legacy, to continue building bridges, to continue spreading hope, and to continue sharing the story of the father who had forgotten and then remembered the enduring power of love. The echo of his remembrance resonated through my life, guiding my steps, inspiring my dreams, and filling my heart with a love that would never fade.